Can God change your life in the next 30 minutes? I believe you're watching right now because God has something special for you. Join me for Jewish Voice and you'll discover how Bible prophecy is coming to pass before our very eyes and why you need to stand with Israel. You can play a role in God's end-time plan. Find out how on Jewish Voice. Shalom and welcome to Jewish Voice. I'm Jonathan Bernis and I am so glad that you've joined us today. We have an incredible program for you. I went all the way to New York City, the Big Apple, to interview my friend Eric Metaxas. Maybe you listen to him on radio or watch him on TBN or other networks. He's a dear friend who loves the Jewish people, a prolific writer, and he has chronicled the life of some great men and women of faith that I think will inspire you. So I want to take you now to that interview in New York with Eric Metaxas. We're about the same age. Actually, I'm a bit older than you. I need to say that.
Yeah.
But we're from the same era.
Yes.
And I would love to hear a little of your testimony. I know a little of it just from talking with you off camera.
Right. It's, well, I love telling this story because you talk about putting the focus on God. I mean, what credit can we take? None. My story is, it's a real American story. My mom and dad came from Europe. My dad came from Greece. In 1955, in the mid-50s, my mom came from Germany in the mid-50s, and they met in an English class here in Manhattan, right here, and about like about a mile from where we are, 2 miles from where we are. They met in an evening English class for immigrants to learn the English language. So they met, the young German woman and the Greek man, and I was grew up in Queens. You know, if you're Greek, you know.
So you were surrounded by Jewish neighbors, I'm sure.
Well, let me tell you something.
Sides.
I was born in Astoria, which was wall-to-wall Greeks. But when I was like 2, we moved up to Jackson Heights. Jackson Heights is totally Jewish. We were the only non-Jews on the floor of our building, okay? You know, it's like all these apartments and stuff. And so Jackson Heights at that time was completely Jewish. It's just kind of amazing that I can remember the people on our hallway and stuff. I grew up, just like many people grow up as ethnically Jewish, I grew up as ethnically Greek. The whole Greek culture, the Greek church and everything. Of course, my mother being German, you know what happens if you're raised half Greek and half German? That means you will be raised Greek. We went to the Greek church, the whole thing. So I grew up in the Greek church, but I never really got the gospel. I never really got, it was religion, you know, when we talk about religion in the pejorative sense. So the people were wonderful. I mean, we all know just good people. The Greek people in that community were wonderful. We moved up to Danbury, Connecticut. There's a Greek community there. But somehow I never heard about Jesus in the way that we need to hear about. The culture is not telling us that, right? So I really drifted. I was not hostile to God, but it's like I really didn't know, can we know God? Or, you know, I would bump into people kind of like your story in high school who were born again, and I was not hostile to it, but nothing ever came of it. And then, of course, I went to Yale University, which is a bastion of secularism. If you want to lose your faith and want to become part of the, you know, politically correct, cultural Marxist lockstep left, that's the place. And in the 80s when I was there, it was already crazy.
Tons of Jews again, of course.
The secular Jews. But by the time I graduated, I was an English major. I wanted to be a writer. I was really lost, Jonathan. I was one of those people that you just think, I've been sort of told that life has no meaning. Nobody ever said it, but you get the impression that life has no meaning. Nobody talks about God or the meaning of life or why I'm on the planet. You just kind of, you get a job and you do your thing and whatever. But I didn't have a job. I was an English major.
You aspired to write.
I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to be a writer. But the funny thing is that I wasn't sure what I wanted to write because I admired all these fiction writers. But for me, the meaning of life was really important. And I was sort of stumbling along thinking there is no such thing. The smartest people in the world, you know, have come to the conclusion that we don't ask that question. At a place like Yale, we don't ask that question because the answer would be, oh, let's see, we evolved via random mutations by accident from the primordial soup to where we are now. It's all an accident. Life is an accident. Your life is an accident. Your life has no meaning. That is so bleak. It is so inescapably bleak and horrific. Nobody goes there. Nobody mentions it. They just say, get a good job, work hard, go for the gusto. But nobody actually, I was an English major, so I did not get a good job.
What's ironic, if you look at the history of Harvard, Yale, the other Ivy League schools, what were they started
they
as
were
divinity
all
schools?
Profoundly Christian. But as I say, by the time I got there, I was so lost. So I graduated, and if the message at a place like Yale is, don't think about the big questions because we don't have any good answers for you. So here's what you do. Get a good job, work really hard, be successful, go for the gusto. My problem is I was an English major, therefore I did not get a good job. I was not able to distract myself from the questions. So I stumbled around trying to be a writer. I lived in Boston for a while. Then you talk about admitting defeat. I moved back in with my parents in Danbury, Connecticut. I was 24 years old. Now, can you imagine my parents are working class European immigrants who they achieved the American dream. They have a house. They have 2 boys. Their oldest goes to Yale. And then he comes home lost.
I can't imagine.
And so
it had
that
to be
was
disheartening.
Oh, well, it was disheartening for me because I got to tell you, all my Yale friends had, they had parents that would say like, oh, Eric's, he's finding himself. They would have that kind of American attitude. But my parents were like, hey, you need to find yourself a job. You need to, make something of yourself. So I had a horrible year. The only thing I could do with my Yale degree, think how pathetic. I had no real skills, okay? So I got a job as a proofreader at Union Carbide Corporation in Danbury, Connecticut. You want to talk about Gehenna? My nightmare to go to a corporate environment, into a cubicle, fluorescent lit cubicle, and to read, chemical manuals, to proofread. It was just like a nightmare. And in the middle of this genuinely horrible year, and when I say horrible, I mean it was a dark time in my life. I was just really depressed, really lost. The Lord sent a man into my life, a graphic designer who worked on the floor. His name was Ed Tuttle, and he was a born-again believer. And he starts talking to me, but he was very sensitive and very loving, so he didn't really push it. But I was in enough pain that I was sort of, even though I was hostile, I was also asking questions, And this went on for months where I was not actively pursuing this faith, but we were friends, and so we would have these conversations, and I began very slowly, because I had this hostile Yale mindset, to open my mind up just a little bit. But
I don't want people that are watching to miss this. The beautiful thing about the lows of life is it opens us up to hear and to consider something new.
I
and
thank
people
God
that are
for
watching
that. Yeah.
that are going through a real low in your life right now, this is the moment for God to do something supernatural, to do something amazing, to do something to demonstrate that He is a God who loves you and cares about you.
That's exactly right. I never would have wished this on anybody. I didn't want to go through this, but in the middle of this, and I'm not kidding, this was misery. I was very deeply miserable. And so because of this pain, I would open up just a little bit to this idea of God, but not too much. I'm not going to church with you, Ed Tuttle. I'm not going to go to a Bible study with you, but tell me a little bit more about this, and then that's enough. And, it was this kind of cat and mouse game. Literally almost a year into this, I had begun to, he said to me, Eric, I don't think you know God the way you could. And I remember being offended. Like, who do you think you are? Every intelligent person knows that you can't know God in that way. And that's just, that's for those people. That's not for me. But in my pain, I remember what he said to me. He said, well, why don't you ask God to reveal Himself to you? So I thought to myself, well, I don't know if God exists. So what am I going to pray to the room? How am I going to even pray to somebody? I don't know if He exists. But in my pain, every now and again, I would be willing to say, God, if you're up there, I need a sign. That's the famous thing, right? Give me a sign. Well, long story short, one night I had a dream, and I won't tell the story of the dream because it's a little complicated, but Jesus came to me in this dream and totally blew my mind. It was so mind-blowing that in the dream I knew Jesus is real. Everything that I had feared or hoped or whatever, it's real, it's true, and I'm free. I found what I've been looking for, or what I was afraid didn't even exist. I was afraid to look for it because I thought maybe it doesn't exist. I found it, and I woke up and I went to work and I told my friend the dream. He said, what is this? What do you think it means? And I said, I've accepted Jesus. And I never would have said those words. I was just so hostile to the whole thing. But I said, I've accepted Jesus. And from that day, that was the summer of 1988, I have been totally born again, and I have given my life over to him totally. And it literally happened in a dream overnight. I write about it in my book, Miracles.
That dream,
but it's also on my website.
That dream transformed your life
Overnight.
And you woke up knowing.
Yeah, it was literally overnight. I mean, I had begun to think about God and to start, gingerly reading some books, but I was nowhere there. I was just beginning. And it's in a way because my heart was open, God came in with this dream. And the dream so brilliantly wove together three different parts of my life that alone was mind-blowing. Like, I just thought...
That should give everyone hope. That there's people... I've been praying for my mother now for 40 years. I've been a believer for 40 years. And with the snap of a finger, a dream, a vision, something where God intervenes, everything can change. I hope you're enjoying my interview with Eric. We'll return in just a moment. But I want to take just a couple of minutes now to encourage you to get involved with Jewish Voice. We need partners. We call them shalom partners. Shalom means well-being, wholeness, not just peace, but actually completion. And our mission is to bring wholeness and fullness and completion to Jewish people and their neighbors. How do we do that? By providing medical care, dental care, clean water, but most importantly, the gospel. We need your help. I want to ask you to become a Shalom partner this week. $30 a month will help us to proclaim the gospel to Jewish people in need, to provide humanitarian aid. $30 a month. The greatest way that you can bless a Jewish person is by providing the gospel. Let me give you another need. It's a great need that we have right now. Water purifiers. It costs us $75 to provide clean water to a family for 5 years, only $75. I want to ask you to be super generous today. And I know this might be a stretch, but I'm going to ask you to pray about giving a $750 gift today. Think of this, 10 families will receive clean water for 5 years, $750. It is not an offering, it is an investment. So please pick up the phone and call, give a $750 gift if you can do it, and anything you do will help, or become a Shalom partner, $30 a month, or do both. Become a Shalom partner and give a $750 gift, clean water, 5 years for 10 families. We have some great gifts we want to send you as our way of saying thank you. Eric Metaxas, 7 Men, 7 Women, and the Secret of Their Greatness, along with Why Satan Hates the Jews, and a beautiful bookmark with our logo on it, with Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And if you become a monthly partner and you can give a gift of $250 or more, we'll also include Eric's book, 7 More Men and the Secret of Their Greatness. These gifts will inspire you and help you grow in your faith. Please pick up the phone and call now.
Jonathan is asking for your help today to provide much-needed medical care and supplies to Jewish people and their neighbors in Africa. Your support is crucial right now, as the need is so urgent. To say thank you for your one-time gift of $40 or more, we'll send you Eric Metaxas' text, combining his 2 books, 7 Men and 7 Women, and the Secret of Their Greatness. Along with Eric's book, we will include Jonathan's important booklet on anti-Semitism, Why Satan Hates the Jews, and this Hear, O Israel bookmark. Your support today will provide the funds needed to continue our clinics in Africa, which also provides the platform to share the gospel with these precious people. Jonathan is encouraging you to join him as a Shalom partner with Jewish Voice. as you join us with your monthly support of just $30 today. We will also include Eric Metaxas' latest book, 7 More Men and the Secret of Their Greatness. This brand new hardcover edition is full of inspiring stories that will be a blessing to your life. Call our 800 number now and let our representative know what level of giving you would like to participate in. If you prefer, you can always choose to give online at jewishvoice.tv. Thank you for your generous support of Jewish Voice and for making a difference in so many lives through your sacrifice. Now, let's rejoin Jonathan.
Let's talk about another hero of ours, Corrie ten Boom. You write about Corrie ten Boom.
Yeah, she was a hero in the Nazi era. She was she lived in Amsterdam, and she was a very serious Christian whose family, it's really fascinating, they seem to have a heart for the Jewish people. Now, to think about early in the 20th century, to have a bunch of Christians in Holland who loved the Jews, it was a very interesting thing. But when the Nazis, came to take over the country, she and her family were not willing to go along with the program. And so they basically spent a lot of time saving Jews and risking their own lives to save Jews. She and her sister were eventually sent to, I think it's Ravensbrück, to one of the Nazi camps. And one of the things that I'll never forget, it's a real lesson. Corrie ten Boom's sister, you get the impression she was the really holy one of the two, right? She was the one encouraged. When Corrie was upset, the sister was the one that had this amazing faith. And at one point in their grim barracks, there were lice in the straw, which is a typical thing in these places. And Corrie's sister said that the Word of God tells us to thank Him in all things, for all things, to praise Him for all things, which means that we should praise Him for everything, including the lice. And Corrie just said that's insane. Well, it is a funny thing because God says, if you praise me for everything, you're acknowledging that I am in everything. I can be in everything. Even the calamity that comes to you, I can use it for good. Acknowledge me in all things. And so at some point, I think almost as a pro forma prayer, she thought, okay, I'll go along with it to get my sister to shut up. I'll thank God for the lice. Well, some weeks later, it was revealed that some of the guards at that camp did not come into their barracks to shut down this Bible study they were conducting. I think if I'm getting the story right. Why? Because of the lice. If it hadn't been for the lice, people would not have been able to come to faith. And I think that that's a lesson to every one of us that we need to. I mean, when the Bible says, rejoice in the Lord always, it means literally always. What does God know that we don't know? That He says, don't rejoice in me only when everything goes your way. Rejoice in me always. I've got this secret knowledge that I want to let you in on, but I'm not going to force you. When it says, be anxious for nothing, but in all things by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, give thanks. I mean, you start realizing God is trying to tell us the secret because He loves us. He's saying, be anxious for nothing. You see the lice, you see your problems, your financial problems, your unsaved relatives, blah, 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 blah. I am commanding you. I'm not suggesting it. I'm commanding you to be anxious for nothing. If you want to please me, obey me in this. Pray, rejoice, thank me, give me your problems. But if you take on worry and anxiety, you're sinning against me. Now, I think to myself, how many people kind of let that go? Like we look at the big sins, but we say, well, that's a little one. We all struggle with that. But why would God say that? He says it because He loves us and because He says, you're my child. You give me your problems. Stop taking it on yourself. But He doesn't force us. If we want to worry and be miserable, we're also making Him miserable. As our loving Father, it's deeply upsetting to Him to see His loving children suffer in our own anxiety. It's upsetting to Him. If we want to please the Father, we have to believe what the Word says and live it out. Every now and again, God gives us a glimpse to see, It's true.
What a great story.
Right?
Maybe you're going through a really difficult time now. I know that some of you are. Think about this story. God knows what's ahead, and He wants to give you eyes to see what you're going through, maybe just what you need right now. But there is a solution ahead, and God has the answer for you. Let's talk about a few more people that you profiled.
Yeah.
George Washington
Yeah.
is a really important one.
He's the number in my book. 7 Men, it goes in chronological order, but the first chapter is on Washington, and I have to tell you what the stories are about. The 7 stories. What makes a hero? What makes somebody great? It's really giving of themselves for others. That's the definition, the Bible's definition of love. Agape love is not, I feel warmly toward you. Who cares about that? The question is, do I live in a way that puts you above me? That says, I'm going to trust God enough to bless you and not to worry about myself. The story of Washington is the classic case of that. This is a man, when I understood his story, I was so ashamed that I had spent all these years not really appreciating who he was. This is a man who, if you go back and you think about what was going on at that time, he almost single-handedly was used by God to win the Revolutionary War against the British. There's no question about it. I mean, he was a heroic figure, and there's all kinds of examples, and it's amazing. But when they had effectively won the war, he was up in Newburgh, New York, not far from here, but less than an hour from where we are, with all of his officers, and they were waiting for something. I don't know. They hadn't really kind of gotten the final, disposition of how things are going to go, but they're right at the end of the war. And the officers, many of them had not been paid for years. The Congress, and this is almost comedy, right? In 1783, there's such a weak federal government that they can't even collect taxes. So today, the federal government is way too big and too powerful. Back then, before the Constitution, which was 1787, they couldn't get their act together to even collect taxes or anything like that. So you have these officers thinking, some of us almost lost our lives. We've given years of our lives away from our families. We've done all this stuff, and we're not even being paid. And they got more and more angry. And eventually they thought, what's the fair solution to this? The fair solution is a military coup. We won the war, so we are going to give an ultimatum, either Congress, pay us now, or we're going to, withdraw our protection or whatever. We're going to run the country. And we propose that George Washington, as is fitting, he should be the first king of the United States of America. We're not going to go with the plan that we had before. Now, if you look at it on a human level, it actually makes a lot of sense, right? Nobody had ever had a republic and self-government and liberty in the history of the world, ever. Okay, so this is not like this is an established idea and they're going off the reservation. Nobody had ever pulled this off. So they realized, look, it's not working. We're going to do a coup, and our king, George Washington, will be a noble king. He's not going to be a tyrant. He's going to, So this kind of gets out. He hears about this. And Washington was so grieved that he gave his men a very serious dressing down. And I think to myself, what really happened was this man, George Washington, was offered a level of power that is inconceivable to us. They said, we want to make you king of this new nation. Here it is. You've earned it. We've earned it. We're not going to kill anybody. We're just doing what is right. We haven't been paid. We're in charge. We'll be good guys. And he turns it down. And King George III, when word got back to him about what had happened, that Washington had turned this down and rebuked the men who dared to propose a monarchy where he had been fighting for liberty and self-government, George III said, if this is true, that Washington did this, then he is the greatest man who has ever lived. In other words, in that day and age, to turn down that kind of power, knowing that you had the freedom to exercise it wisely. They weren't saying become a bloodthirsty tyrant, whatever. He turned it down. And I thought to myself, how many Americans understand that if it weren't for that exceedingly noble act on the part of this great, truly great man in history, America would have never come into being. We would have never had what we have. When he did become president, he was practically forced to become president. He didn't want to become president. He he didn't want a second term, and then he refuses a third term. He basically says no. I think this guy was willing to give of himself in a way that's so noble and so beautiful that it is a model for us.
What an
because you
amazing
think
story.
It took a kind of a strength that most of us, we have to be honest, would I have had the strength to say no to that much money, to that much power, to that much whatever it is? He is an extraordinary model.
True humility
It is
in
it is
action.
humility and agape love in a way that no wonder he's the father of our country. He should be called the father of our country.
Great story.
Jonathan is asking for your help today to provide much-needed medical care and supplies to Jewish people and their neighbors in Africa. Your support is crucial right now, as the need is so urgent. To say thank you for your one-time gift of $40 or more, we'll send you Eric Metaxas' text, combining his 2 books, 7 Men and 7 Women, and The Secret of Their Greatness. Along with Eric's book, we will include Jonathan's important booklet on anti-Semitism, Why Satan Hates the Jews, and this Hear, O Israel bookmark. Your support today will provide the funds needed to continue our clinics in Africa, which also provides the platform to share the gospel with these precious people. Jonathan is encouraging you to join him as a Shalom partner with Jewish Voice. As you join us with your monthly support of just $30 today, we will also include Eric Metaxas' latest book, 7 More Men and The Secret of Their Greatness. This brand new hardcover edition is full of inspiring stories that will be a blessing to your life. Call our 800 number now and let our representative know what level of giving you would like to participate in. If you prefer, you can always choose to give online at jewishvoice.tv. Thank you for your generous support of Jewish Voice and for making a difference in so many lives through your sacrifice. Now, let's rejoin Jonathan.
As we close the program today, I really want to encourage you to become a Shalom partner, a monthly partner for $30 a month. You'll be able to bless the Jewish people and their neighbors with eye care, dental care, medical care, prescriptions, antibiotics that they don't have access to. They will die without your partnership. Some will die. So please pick up the phone and become a monthly partner as our way of saying thank you. We'll send you out Eric Metaxas' book, 7 Men, 7 Women. Very inspirational, a little book that I've written, Why Satan Hates the Jews. And if you become a Shalom partner, we'll also send you Eric Metaxas' latest book, 7 More Men and the Secret of Their Greatness. Your partnership means more than you can know. So please get involved, become a Shalom partner, or give a $750 gift this week and provide clean water to 10 families for 5 years. Thanks for joining us today. If you'd like more information about our ministry or you have a need that you'd like us to pray about, you can log on to our website. It's jewishvoice.tv. We will pray for every need. jewishvoice.tv. I love hearing from you, and I want you to know that we care about you and we will pray for your needs. As we close the program, I want to remind you that God tells each of us to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Psalm 122:6, pray for the peace of Jerusalem. May they prosper who love thee. So if you want to prosper this week, pray for that Jewish friend, pray for Israel, pray for the Jewish people. On behalf of Eric Metaxas and myself, this is Jonathan Bernis saying shalom and God bless you.
Coming up on next week's program, Jonathan and Ezra show you the power of remembering the Sabbath.